What's up, everyone? Today we're going to be talking about YouTube success and taking advice with a grain of salt. So let's just get started here. I've watched a lot of advice from YouTubers, and I've also watched a lot of advice from these YouTube channels that specialize in giving advice, social media advice, and so forth. Daryl Eves, video creators, and Savvy Sexy Social are some of the big ones that come to mind. Basically, they have like 100,000 subscribers, around that range, 50 to 100,000 subscribers, and their goal is specifically social media and advice on growing your channel, and they're dedicated to YouTubers. So they're great people. They give great advice, honestly. However, I would say, sometimes you can't take advice head on. And this is an example of one of the things. And this doesn't just apply to YouTube advice or YouTube success. It can apply to anything. And therein lies the question, where do you draw the line? Where should you take advice and where shouldn't you? How can you trust yourself? What if you're wrong? And how can you trust another individual? When is that person right and when is that person wrong? That's a very tough line to draw, because if you make the wrong decision, such as you're too arrogant when you're this young sapling who hasn't experienced much, and you have this mentor who's succeeded in life giving you advice, where do you draw the line? And I think, generally speaking, you want to weight things properly. So if this person has succeeded a lot in life, he has a lot of experience, he's where you want to be, you probably want to weight that more. If he's somewhere in between, like for instance, he's making a decent amount of money and he succeeded in other areas in life, maybe health and fitness, but he's giving you advice on something outside of that, say finance, then maybe you shouldn't trust him, because this is a common problem. People take reputation too far, and just because they're rich, just because they've done something, doesn't mean that they're an expert at other things, and therefore you can get bad advice that way. And then finally, sometimes you have to trust your gut, or realize that based on their experience, their credentials, what they've done, some things are not ideal, and maybe you can test things out. I would say that's one of the big ones. I've seen a lot of successful people. They've had mentors, like for instance Warren Buffett with Benjamin Graham. And what Warren Buffett did was, although he initially started following Buffett's he initially started following Benjamin Graham's principles to the T, he started testing things. He started doing things that Benjamin Graham wouldn't do. And the thing with these tests were, they weren't catastrophic. So if he failed, it wasn't a big problem. He wouldn't do anything that put him in a position where he was screwed if he failed. So that's very important as well. So maybe you should do a little bit of both. And so let's go back to the YouTube success and YouTube advice thing. So one of the common things that they say is you want to engage with your fans. You want to read all their comments, read everything that they put out in the comments. And I wouldn't say that's a end all be all piece of advice. And I have quite a few very successful YouTubers who I've stumbled across today who have gone a different way. Why? Because they've gotten to a level where the comments are just too toxic. They get to their psychological state. Even if it's a lot of good positive comments, there's still a lot of negative comments in there, and those, based off psychology, affect you more. And that really does work against you. Plus you have to deal with a lot of other things that's all that fame brings. Stalkers, deranged people, people who don't respect your privacy. All these things are involved as well. So who am I talking about? Boogie, I think it's Boogie 2238 or 2258. I forgot his numbers for his username. Nerd Cubed and Total Biscuit. These are all gamers, and they all have over 2 million subscribers. And they've all spoken out on this. I've found their posts. I found what they've said about this. And they've written large articles on this on Reddit and Boogie made a whole YouTube video on this. And again, if you want to see that stuff, I'll try and remember to link it in the description. But long story short, they've talked about it. And long story short, what they've said is that when you're starting out and you're at 0 subscribers, up until maybe 10,000 subscribers or 50,000, NerdCube says specifically 10,000, your comments are your life. You read them, you let those comments shape you, you engage with every single comment, and it really directs and changes the content you create. But then up until a point, it gets different. And for NerdCubed and Total Biscuit, it got to a point where it's just so much that it affected them horribly. They couldn't think, they couldn't sleep, they couldn't stop reading their comments, which affected them even worse. I mean, there's this whole story which you can read in the description. I'll link it. There's a whole story behind that, and if you want to read the whole thing, you can read it yourself. But again, there's dark sides to YouTube, and has every YouTuber with over 1 million subscribers had to deal with it in this type of way? Most likely not, but most likely a lot of them had to deal with this on some level, and that sucks. And for these two people, I mean, it got to a point where privacy, the toxicity, the bad comments was just too much. And Boogie, he says that, even if he had 40 good comments, sometimes the 1 or 2 really toxic bad ones is just too much. And that plagues him. So again, there's more to the story than that. But again, it just goes to show you that every person, giving advice, sure, they have maybe good intentions, or maybe that's the best advice based off their experiences, their place in life, what they've gone through. But I think a very important thing to consider is, based off what they've gone through, their experiences and so forth, is that the best advice for me? And I think it really depends. A lot of these people that I've watched, like these channels like Savvy Sexy Social, they're giving, generally speaking, good advice. Engage with your comments. Read and respond to every tweet, because that increases shareability and engagement and your super fans and all that sort of stuff. That's what these people say. But at the same time, I think it very much depends. Like, these people giving this advice, they have channels with 50,000, or in Savvy Sexy Social's case, she has about 27,000 right now as of the recording of this. And I'm not saying anything against her, but it's really important to take advice with a grain of salt, because she has this many comments and her videos are very mainstream and just advice driven. So most people coming to them are just there to get the value and leave. For more personal channels like mine and maybe vlog channels and so forth, you can get a completely different dynamic. A lot of toxicity, a lot of people that don't respect privacy, people that get very stalkerish, people who do anything to try and contact you and try and stuff their advice down your throat when you don't even know who they are, and their advice is just, very toxic by its nature. So it really depends on a lot of situations. And I know that PewDiePie, some of the biggest YouTubers, have shut off comments, and some other people, it really just depends on the nature of your vehicle you're putting out there, and to understand this. So this is my video on the dark sides of YouTube. I don't think everyone has to go through this. It really just depends on a lot of factors. Some people, they don't really care about it, or they don't read the comments and they're just really chill about it, or